Quickly, before the video starts, I wanted to let you guys know I do have a new merchandise campaign up currently. It's got a pretty cool new gold flake printed design, and it comes in zip-ups, t-shirts, and pullover hoodies. So it's only going to be available until December 28th. Go ahead and grab yourself one if you're into that sort of thing. The link will be in the description. What is going on, guys, and welcome to my very first Pokemon Sun and Moon Wi-Fi battle. This is against Cypher from Twitter. And I'm honestly really excited to finally be able to dive into the new metagame. It's definitely a lot different. There's some really fun and interesting things about this. I do still have some learning to do. This was actually the very first team that I ever built. So I wasn't really too sure about how well they were going to work together, if there was any good synergy or not, but I do have some pretty solid mons here, so I feel like it's definitely going to be fun to give these guys a try and see how this works out. So looking at my opponent's team, I'm mainly afraid of the Tapu Fini. The Tapus are all extremely powerful, and that kind of does work to a lot of my team there. So I am worried about that. The Jolteon can be a problem if I lose my checks to it, but let's just go ahead and hop into the match here and see how it goes. Alright, so looking at the team preview, I really wasn't too sure on what he would want to lead off with. I kind of expected Skarmory. So I'm going to be leading off with my Toxapex, and this thing is insanely annoying. It's basically like a Tentacruel on steroids, but unfortunately for me, he actually ends up leading off with the Jolteon, which Toxapex does not have any fun playing with. And I do not want to take an electric attack and lose my main wall early, so I have to switch here, and I decided to go into Raichu. I could have gone into Alolan Marowak, who does have Lightning Rod, although I was really worried the whole game about this thing making the prediction and going for the Shadow Ball. But he gets a critical hit on his first Volt Switch, so the very first turn on the channel is a critical hit on my end, so that's kind of annoying, but it's no big deal because Raichu is still, he's fine. Look at Surfing, ain't got a worry in the world. So he's now going to bring in his shiny Decidueye, who's looking awesome, by the way, and I'm just going to go ahead and switch back into Wallington, looking at this thing's potential movesets. It didn't seem like he really had a whole lot to do to me. So he's actually going to go for a U-turn, which was a good play on his end, and guess what? He brings back out the Jolteon. So we're right back where we started, and I'm just sitting over here eating my leftovers, and at this point, I expect him to probably make a prediction, predicting me to switch, but I have to play it safe here. So to change things up a bit, I'm going to go into Ron Burgundy, who is my shiny Anchorman. Check that thing out. Delmice is Assault Vested here, so I can take really any special attack he wants to throw at me, as he just goes for a Thunderbolt, and does a decent amount of damage still. So I'm not seeing any Life Orb or anything, so I'm expecting this thing to either be Specs or Scarf. Obviously, because this is a new metagame, I don't know how much damage. I haven't run any damage calcs or anything, but I'm expecting it to potentially be Specs. So here, I expected him to switch into his Skarmory, so I make a double switch myself and go into my Raichu, which is perfect because that's exactly what happened. Except unfortunately now, I'm going for the Volt Switch as he brings in Jarvis yet again, which I was really hoping wouldn't happen, but freaking Jarvis is just out here causing me problems, as now he's just going to go for a Shadow Ball. I really did not have any switches. Me playing around this Jolteon early game is really kind of messing me up, so I decided to stay in here thinking he might overpredict, but he just goes straight for the Shadow Ball, and that's going to take out Raichu, who didn't get to do anything, which is sad, but the good news about Raichu's death is that it allows me to get a free switch into whatever I want. So I bring in my Tapu Bulu, who sets up the Grassy Surge, and he has to switch here because he doesn't really have much to hit me with, as he goes back into the Skarmory, who is a problem which I did predict, so I went for the Stone Edge. It's the only neutral move I had against that thing, and it's not doing too much damage, even being Choice Banded. So Skarmory is just a bulky mofo over there, just putting in that work. But here I decide to switch into my Marowak, as he's actually just going to decide to set up his Stealth Rock, which is honestly not that bad for me. I do have Rapid Spin on my Anchorman if I do decide to try to get rid of those. So here I'm expecting him to switch. There's no way he's going to stay in against this, and I figured he would probably want to go into the Tapu Fini, which he does, and he's going to change it up with the Misty Surge. So now it's all pink in the background, and I decided to go for the Shadow Bone, obviously making the prediction, trying to get at least something neutral on this thing. And that's not even going to do very much. It does less than half, plus the leftovers. This thing's looking pretty damn solid here. So I obviously cannot leave Marowak in here. I don't want to take a water attack, and I decide now to switch back into my Toxapex, who is still afraid of being out here due to the fact that that freaking Jolteon is still just causing trouble. But he does go for the Scald. It's not going to do very much damage to me, and luckily I don't get the burn, which is real nice. I was honestly expecting my first Scald to get me burned, but I feel like that's setting me up for a good couple years of, like, good Scald luck, who knows. But I'm getting some leftovers. We're both just, or Black Sludge actually, but, same shit. Just over here eating my sludge like a boss. And at this point, I know he's going to want to bring out the Jolteon. Although, rather than trying to switch out and getting the double switch matchup, I just decided to stay in and take the initiative to set up some Toxic Spikes. So that's going to be really useful for me later on, at least even if it's just one layer, I'll be getting continual damage, and that's kind of what I need right now, just some chip damage. So Here, obviously, I cannot stay in. Wallington is looking too damn good against his team, so I have to decide to switch into somebody here, and I figure Tapu Bulu is probably the best option, as I'm seeing him probably wanting to go for the Thunderbolt. So he is actually just going to go for a Volt Switch, which is quite annoying. This thing is just pivoting up a storm, and he's able to get the matchup against me again. So he's going to go ahead and get tucked back in the bag for later. Jolteon has just been around. It's going to be around for quite some time, and that thing is pretty difficult to deal with, honestly. But he's going to bring back out the Skarmory, and at this point, obviously, the only attack I have against it really is Stone Edge that hits it for neutral damage, so I have to switch out, and I'm going back into Wallington. We're out here just having a pretty interesting mind battle with our walls here, as he actually goes straight for the Brave Bird, trying to get as much damage as possible, but check out my man Toxapex here. Taking like nothing from that. Obviously, not very invested in attack with this Skarmory, but still, that's pretty damn impressive. Plus, I do have Regenerator on this thing rather than its alternate ability, which when the opponent is poisoned, you get critical hits every time. I figured I would make this a Regenerator one just to really ensure that this thing just stays alive forever. So it actually kind of works out too. This thing is really frustrating, and I kind of feel bad about using it. But now he's going to go into his Tapu Fini again, and at this time, I was kind of wondering what he wanted to do against me. I don't really know a lot of the competitive movesets for these guys, so I wasn't really too sure. I generally see Calm Mind in like Ice Beam, Scald, and stuff like that, but I just went for a Scald of my own just to try to get as much damage on whatever he sent in as possible, but he doesn't take a whole lot from it, as I'm actually just sitting over here just getting my health back. Honestly, it just takes a couple turns to get back to pretty much full. Plus, if I switch out, I'm going to be pretty much 100% healthy. So I'm going to actually just decide to switch here. I decide to play it safe, and I'm going to go into Ron Burgundy. Even if he does have Ice Beam, I should be able to take it relatively nicely because I'm pretty specially defensive, plus with the Assault Vest. But he actually goes for the Defog here, which I was actually kind of not too worried about, considering it did get rid of the Stealth Rocks on my end. It did get rid of my one layer of Poison Spikes on his side, but honestly not that big of a deal. I can set those up later if I really need to. But yeah, him getting rid of the Stealth Rock on my end was actually pretty huge, especially for my Alolan Marowak, who is my counter to Jolteon. I know that if I'm full health against that Jolteon, I will be able to take at least one attack from it, so that's kind of my way around that thing currently, as now he's going to bring out Old Man Krabs, and he's about to catch a Gyro Ball to the face. It is super effective, although it's not really going to do a whole lot, and I've never seen a Crabominable in a battle before, so I really was not too sure on what this thing's move pool was, but I'm expecting, you know, obviously Ice Punch or some type of fighting move like that. But he goes for the Ice Hammer here as I bring in my Toxapex, and that actually does a solid amount of damage considering it's not very effective, and I'm a freaking beast. But that kind of leads me to believe this thing might be Choice Banded or something along the lines of that. So he's going to go ahead and switch out. He's getting his big-ass hands out of here, and he's going to bring back out Jarvis, yet again, who is not poisoned because he did not come in against any Toxic Spikes. I went for the Scald here. I was thinking about just going straight for the Spikes, which probably would have been a better idea, seeing as the Scald really doesn't do a whole lot to this Jolteon. And plus, I don't get the burn, which is sad. But the battlefield is going to return back to normal, and it's looking pretty nice now. I was too much pink. But so here I'm going to decide to switch things up yet again, and I'm going to switch into my Como-O, who is going to take this Thunderbolt relatively nicely, but this is what kind of led me to believe this thing was Specs. That really seemed like Specs damage to me. So for the rest of the match, I'm definitely banking on the fact that that thing is choiced. So I get basically a free attack here. I know he's not going to want to stay in, so I go for the Focus Blast, and it actually ends up missing as he sends back out his Crabominable snowman-ass thing. So I luckily hit the second one. Focus Blast is coming through, and that is going to be a dead Crabominable, which is kind of sad because those things are badass. As much as I wanted to kill it, I kind of wanted to see it do something. But yeah, luckily I was able to outspeed there. I honestly just do not know the speed tier, so that's something I do have to work on, but it does take a lot of research currently in the battles right now. But he brings out the Decidueye. Obviously, I'm Choice Spexed into Focus Blast. I forgot to mention I was Spec, so it was definitely killing whatever it hit. But he's going to go for the Brave Bird as I yet again send out Wallington, who is really just showing its true potential right now. I've set this thing in like 1,000 times. There's really not a whole lot you can do to it unless you bring like a perfectly direct counter for this thing, which a lot of people are doing because this is such a problem. But he's going to go now for the Spirit Shackle, so he's going to go for the badass animation, and it does not even bring me past half, which is pretty nice. And he actually makes it so I can't escape, which is fine by me. As I went for a Scald, actually expecting him to probably switch. I do actually get the burn this time, so that's pretty solid. I'm going to get a little bit of damage from that every now and again, so that's cool. But I get some Black Sludge, he gets hurt by his burn, and at this point, I really don't think he wants to stay in here and just try to get as much damage as possible. I expect him to want to switch probably into Jarvis yet again, so he brings back out the Jolteon, and since I was way too scared to try to make plays, I just decided to stay in here and go for the Toxic Spikes. Rather than risking him making a prediction on me switching into something else, I felt like just getting off the Spikes would probably be a little more beneficial to me. So at this point, here I decide to make a solid prediction. I know that he's going to expect me to switch, so I'd actually decide to stay in here rather than trying to make the switch. I just stay in knowing that he's not going to go for the electric attack, and he doesn't. He went for some type of hidden power, and that allows me to go for another Scald, which yet again gets another burn. So I get 2 burns in a row, which I kind of feel bad about, although it's on a special attacker, so I guess it's really not that big of a deal. So, based on my assumption that he is choiced in some way, there's no way that he's going to want to stay in here and have to go for another hidden power. So, I'm going to try to take advantage of the fact that he is going to have to switch out. So, I'm going to switch out myself as he goes into his Tapu Fini, and I'm going to bring back out my Anchorman. So, I'm feeling pretty solid about this matchup. I know that with my Assault Vest, I should be able to take at least 1 Ice Beam from this thing if he does choose to go for that. So, bring back out the red Anchor. This is honestly probably one of my favorite Gen 7 Pokemon. He's just really cool looking. I like the concept, and he's got a pretty interesting typing too. But he gets hurt by the poison. It's going to bring him below half. And here I have either Power Whip or Gyro Ball, so I just decided to actually go for the Gyro Ball as he actually goes for the Defog yet again, which is annoying because it's going to get rid of my layer of Poison Spikes, which are failing to do anything because this damn thing is just out here defogging up a storm. But I go for the Gyro Ball. It doesn't end up doing a whole lot to this thing, honestly. With the Fairy Water typing, it is neutral. I probably should have gone for Power Whip, but I guess I was just kind of afraid to miss. But at this point, it's looking like one more, obviously, attack is going to be able to finish this thing off, as he does not want that thing to die yet. I'm assuming he wants to keep it around for the defog support. But he brings in his Fire Turtle. Torkoal's got a new buddy. Freaking Turtonator's actually pretty cool. I'm a pretty big fan of the design. Honestly, I don't know how viable they are going to be competitively, but it's pretty sweet. So, I'm assuming he forgot about the effects of the Misty Surge, so he tried to go for the Will-O-Wisp, but it obviously doesn't work. And here I go for the Earthquake, which, unfortunately for me, he does have the Shucka Berry, which is really a nice play on his end. The Earthquake is really not going to do a whole lot of damage there, and unfortunately, I don't really want to take a Fire attack, although I don't have many switch-in options. I decided just to let Ron Burgundy take one, and with the Assault Vest, it's looking pretty damn solid. Look at that damage. Not bad at all. So, this allows me to go for another Earthquake, and since he doesn't have the berry up, he actually ends up living it with like 1 HP, and I was like, my god, that could not have gone worse. I really would have loved to get the kill there just to see what he would bring in. I would probably end up sacking off Ron Burgundy at that point if he brought something else in and I could get a free matchup. So, unfortunately, he has like 1 HP. He's able to finish me off with 1 more Flamethrower. And at this point, all I can really do is bring in something that's faster than Turtonator. So, I decide to bring in Tapu Bulu, who's going to set up the Grassy Surge yet again. And I'm able to finish this thing off with a Horn Leech and just go ahead and steal that 1 HP you got there. So, I go ahead and eat that up, suck it through my horns, and looking nice and healthy with 94 HP. So at this point, he is able to bring in whatever he wants on this matchup. With the Turtonator going down, he really has multiple options for what he wants to do here. So he decides to actually bring back in the Skarmory, realizing that I probably only really have Stealth or Stone Edge for him. So I really actually wish I had Stealth Rock on my team. I was just thinking about that. It would have been really helpful, especially for the Skarmory switch-ins and all that fun stuff. So I decided to bring back out Wallington with my new, regenerated health. I'm still looking healthy as hell, and this man is having some trouble with with Wallington here. He does have the Jolteon, which is really his only counter, but he gets a Roost Up, which is really annoying for me because that's just going to bring it back to full, and our walls here are just having a nice little wall off, as I go for the Scald hoping to get the burned, but I don't get it, and now he's going to Whirlwind me out of here, which is honestly not that big of a deal because he's going to bring me into Marowak, which is actually perfect because this allows me to scare this thing out with like a Flare Blitz or any type of fire attack. So predicting him to actually switch into something different, I just decided to go for the Shadow Bone, although he just brings in Decidueye, which both of my stabs are able to take care of. So I'm guessing he just wanted to sack off Decidueye. It didn't really do a whole lot to my remaining team, so he gets a tactical, sack there, and he's now able to bring in whatever he wants, and he decides to bring in the Tapu Fini again. So bringing back up the Misty Surge, just going from green to pink, as I'm not going to be able to outspeed this thing, and I don't want to take a water attack, so I go back into Toxapex here, as he actually does just end up going for the Scald, which does, damage to me because I live in water, and I just eat that shit up. But he is getting pretty unlucky with not getting the burns on the Scalds. Kind of felt bad because I got like 2 in a row. I mean, it wouldn't really make that much of a difference with Wallington, I guess, but still, probably would have been nice to see on his end. So, he's getting hurt by his poison. And at this point, I feel like his plan was probably just to let this thing die. That way he could bring in his Jolteon and be able to, do some damage to me finally. So he goes for another Scald. It's not going to do anything. So we're just firing off Hot Waters at each other. It's not going to kill him either. But I do get the KO with the poison after the leftovers. This thing's just trying to hold on. He's like, I'm so hungry. I need more leftovers. But it is not going to be enough, as the poison damage is going to end up knocking this thing out. So His last two Pokemon are the Skarmory and the Jolteon, so seeing the Tapu Fini go down is pretty damn pleasing, so that thing is no longer a worry. So he now brings back out Jarvis for almost the last time. This thing is just, I really wish I had Stealth Rock up, but he is just going to go for a Thunderbolt as I expect. I'm just going to switch into my Como-O. I figured I might be able to take two of these if I get some lucky rolls. So he goes for the first Thunderbolt, and after this damage, it's looking like I'm not going to be able to take another one. So I was mistaken there, but honestly, it's not the end of the world. I wasn't really going to be able to do a whole lot with Como-O here. Unless I was able to live that, I could have finished off the Jolteon, or had he switched into the Skarmory, I had Flamethrower for. So that's what I was going for, although a Thunderbolt is going to take me out. And at this point, I kind of make a misplay. Looking back on it, in hindsight, I should have really switched into Marowak. Considering he is choiced in some way, he wouldn't have been able to hit me with the Thunderbolts, and he would have been forced to switch into his Skarmory, in which case I could just go for a Flare Blitz and probably end up taking it out. But instead, I decided to bring in Bulu again, and I'm just going to go for a Zen Headbutt just because I don't want to end up missing, and I want to just try to get as much chip damage as possible. That was actually, I think, one of my other worries. I didn't think a Flare Blitz was going to be able to take out the Skarmory. Plus, I knew that Marowak was kind of like my bread and butter when it came to beating that Jolteon, so I wanted to preserve it at all costs. So here I decide to switch directly into Marowak, as he's actually going to set up Stealth Rock again, which is lucky for me because I'm able to get Marowak in just before the Stealth Rock, and this is a good matchup for me. Thinking about the situation, I'm feeling pretty confident about Marowak's offensive presence, so I just decided to go straight for the Flare Blitz, and that is in fact going to be able to knock out the Skarmory. So luckily that thing is going to die, but I was mainly just worried about the fact that I didn't think I was going to have enough health to be able to take a Shadow Ball from the Jolteon. After the Rocky Helmet and the recoil, it's looking like I'm not going to be able to do it. So after some leftovers, I'm still above half, and I'm feeling pretty good. But he decides to go into his Jolteon here, and here's where I actually just decide to stay in and see what he wants to go for. He actually ends up going straight for the Thunderbolts, hoping that I didn't have Lightning Rod, which would have been a good play, although I do have the Lightning Rod, so I'm just going to soak that up, and a Flare Blitz is going to finish off the Jolteon. But in hindsight, had he gone for Shadow Ball, it would have ended up killing Marowak, but I would have still been able to go into Toxapex, who can take Spec Shadow Balls from Jolteon all day. As long as he's not locked into Thunderbolts, I was solid there. But that was definitely an interesting match, and I'm really having a lot of fun kind of exploring this new metagame. So expect more Wi-Fi battles soon with a bunch of experimental teams and just interesting Pokemon that I feel like will be fun to use. So thank you guys for watching. Hit that like button if you enjoyed, and I will see you later. Peace out.